Just a little test to see if you can hear us online now.
Testing.
So we just want to verify that we can be heard. See that you all can see us. We just want to make sure that you can hear us online. So if you can give us a thumbs up or put something in the chat there to let us know that you can see us, that would help us. Or you can hear us now. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just trying to turn it on. Okay, come. Okay. My like participate bar or something. Okay, yes, that's what I need. To enable it quick. All right, I'm about to let everybody in now. And I'm gonna have it mute. Sure. Yes. Okay, so I'm about to admit everybody and then we can push record, right? Or are you already recording? Oh, okay.
I don't want to stay, but I don't feel like staying. But then what would happen? We'd be on.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us for this session on the power of priority. We want to make sure that we can be heard. So if you'll just do a little thumbs up in the Zoom there, and that'll let us know that you can hear us just fine. Once we know that you can hear us, I've seen some thumbs up for those that can hear us. All right, great. So I'm Lamont Roth, and
Can hear Stacy Ross.
And we're members at Marcellus Avenue Church of Christ, where I happen to serve as the minister. And we're going to be presenting this session on the power of priority. When we got married, we got married almost 16 years ago. January will make 16 years when we were married, and we were married at the Marcellus Avenue Church of Christ. And at that time, the building had a different look to it. That's what it looks like now, but it had a different look. We stood before God and for a few moments tonight, and we did the traditional thing, right? Like to lift up as a topic from which to teach. Put in the past. In the past. He finally asked me to past. In the past is our tag for this text. At this time. But what happens in marriage is that the vows once we get down into
way
of derailing our dreams, they preempting our plans, is frustrating from what those vows life does have a way of cornering us and if we were like into a state this might be what those vows would sound. And if you're going to be successful, but it's possible that they will sound something like
some other couples that we might know. But sometimes the way we act could be reflected in these vows.
They have stand before God and these witnesses to give you my heart. Well, at least okay, half of my heart.
And that was on April 17th.
I vow to listen to you whenever there are no games
your
on
son
TV.
have his first conversation with you about his driving experience?
Thanks.
You asked him about the experience.
Hey, look, man, look, I ain't stupid.
Did not give us all the details.
To have and to hold in riches and in health from this day forward, as long as it's convenient and pleasant for me.
A day later, that same
As your wife,
day.
I promise to obey you and submit myself to you
The man preach.
when I agree to it.
Why did you
He
decide
said,
not
"Hey,
to?
you work out that difference from the
Well, you're some kind of sharing information.
No.
I'm not going to ask you about your day or engage in a meaningful conversation, but it's fair to give it up tonight because after all, I got me.
You hear me now?
I promise to spend time with you and my husband. As long as my friends aren't going to a concert or having a girls' night.
150 miles. I said, but I was working then. I ain't working no more.
Count on me.
Hey.
To be at work.
I was working then. I ain't working no more.
With you at the house.
You don't hear what I'm saying.
I vow to support and encourage you in all of your endeavors. As long as my mama, daddy, sisters, and brothers agree with what you're doing.
I promise that when we have kids, I will still expect you to work, cook, clean, and take care of the kids without me offering to help, and then be upset when you're too tired to make love.
I promise to always give my body to you as long as I'm not too tired from the kids' basketball practice, youth group activities, homework, housekeeping, my job, and I don't have a headache.
I vow to compare your cooking to my mom's, and I vow to complain and criticize 10 times more than I compliment you.
I vow to expect you to provide and fix everything around the house and on my car, just like my daddy did.
And I vow to never leave you, but I guarantee you that there are going to be times when you wish I would.
If we ever have a problem, instead of verbalizing my feelings to you and to only you, I promise with my whole heart to be passive aggressive, give you the solid treatment, and to withhold myself from you. After all, you should know how I feel.
Lastly, I vow to never admit when I'm wrong, because obviously I'm perfect. As God is my witness, I give you my vow.
So help me, God.
So help me, God. Now we are happily married. We hope.
We hope.
We stay married. I don't think it sounded like that, but unfortunately, that is the reality that many couples face. God designed marriage to be the most important human relationship that we have. Unfortunately, sometimes it just doesn't feel that way. A marriage can often look like the vows that we just made to each other.
But the truth is that the marriage relationship should be second to only our relationship with God. But what does that look like? What does that look like?
When it comes down to it, living that out every day, that marriage is the most important human relationship, how in the world do we make that work? Hence, the law of priority. And this is based on the book, 4 Laws of Love by Jimmy Evans. Today, we're going to be looking at the law of priority. When both people honor God's laws of love, marriage is a place of safety. It is a place of unity. God created marriage, but as a society, we have rejected God's word as the authoritative source for our lives. He alone can tell us how marriage is to work.
Because he is the one that created marriage. And in the book that we are going to take our information from, the other laws of love include the law of pursuit, the law of partnership, and the law of purity. However, we're going to focus on the law of priority today. So, in Genesis 2:23 verses 24, we're all familiar with this text. Let's read it. And Adam said, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman because she was taken out of a man. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh."
Leave here in the Hebrew is solid. And that word means to loosen, to relinquish. And so in marriage, what we're doing is that we're relinquishing the highest position of commitment and devotion that was previously given to our parents. And now we give that position to our spouse.
Now, are you saying that I can't go over to my parents' house? You know, I love my mom and dad. Are you saying I can't be with them and spend time with them anymore?
Not at all. Not at all.
Oh.
We still honor our parents, but now that place of priority is with our spouse. We leave and we cleave to, we become glued to, joined to our spouse. We reprioritize our relationships, making marriage the #1 human relationship.
And see, the thing is, many arguments are rooted in our spouse not feeling like a priority. And when we feel that we are not being made a priority, then we say, okay, well, if I'm not important to you, then you're not going to be important to me. So you make your spouse also feel like less of a priority.
And so we get into this stalemate where we are on each other. I'm waiting on her to move towards me before I move towards her, but she's waiting on me to move towards her before she moves towards me. And now we're both being stubborn and saying, no, she's going to have to come talk to me first because she knows what she did to me.
Well, he knows where I live, and I'm waiting because he shouldn't be treating me like that. So I'm just gonna be over here waiting.
So we're sitting around the house working to not speak to each other. So many of these arguments are rooted in the fact that I don't feel like my spouse is making me a priority, or I have not made my spouse feel like she is a priority.
And when we perceive a threat to the priority of our marriage relationship, jealousy can arise. Sometimes legitimate jealousy can arise. And we start to feel some type of way about forces that are outside of our marriage being a threat, taking my spouse away from me. Sometimes that's how that's perceived.
And it is a legitimate jealousy because this is a threat to the most important human relationship. And so as we pursue this law of priority, it's important to keep in mind that these outside forces may be good. It's not always that there's another man or another woman that comes in to disrupt your happy home. Sometimes it's just good things out of priority, leaving us with no energy or time to really invest in our marriage.
So let's take a look at things in the priority that they should be. We're going to list the most important priorities in our life in order of importance. And what should that be? The first priority in all of our lives should be God. God is always number one, no matter what. Number two should be our spouse. Behind God, our spouse's needs and priorities come next. Then we should have children, if any, children that are in the house, or sometimes some of us may be raising grandchildren or a niece or nephew, any other children that are in the house, then take priority behind the spouse.
Church. Don't get 1 and 4 confused. So the amount of church activity is not directly proportional to our personal relationship with God. The relationship with God is first, but we cannot sacrifice our family on the altar of the church. And after that comes your extended family, friends, and then work, and then other hobbies and interests. So we have to protect our priorities. Now, when it comes to work, some people would maybe move work up some. But I think it's important for us to remember that although we have been called to work, we don't live so that we can work. We work so that we can live. So keeping these priorities in their proper order will just help make our lives all the better. Less stress, less drama in our lives.
And it's very important to have the conversation and to openly communicate what your priorities are as a couple, because if you establish that framework, then when other decisions arise, then you can go back and say, okay, what's more important, extended family or our children? Then you can refer back to the hierarchy that you all have established. And so communication is the cornerstone of a prioritized marriage.
So I'm going to spend some time talking about this issue of communication and prioritizing communication. And any marriage workshop that you are in, communication comes up at some point, because as much as we talk about it, we still have to work at it. We still have to be intentional. And as well as we think we communicate, when someone else judges our communication, it's like, nah, you weren't as clear.
That's what you said.
That's not what you said. Or, well, you know what I meant. So in order to follow the law of priority, we must communicate in a way that speaks to our spouse. You have to communicate in a way that really resonates with the person that you're seeking to connect with. And in this case, it is the spouse.
And so next we're going to talk about communication and what are the building blocks or the pillars of communication. There are 5 pillars that we want to talk about. The first one is the right tone. The right tone I believe we all know what we mean by tone, but as far as how we say our words, we must make sure that our tone reflects respect, care, and value. Because we all know with the same tone that we respect, care, and value, on the wrong day, that tone can be used to reflect sarcasm and can sound like an attack. If someone attacks me, then sometimes we want to have a tendency to clap back or to snap back at someone. And so tone, having the right tone, is something that's very important for one of the pillars of communication.
And this is important for both men and women, because as a man, it's important for me to make sure that my tone communicates security to my wife, because that is one of the biggest needs of a woman. Not a want, but one of the biggest needs, sense of security. So my tone should reflect that. My communication should reflect that. A level of sensitivity instead of selfishness, a level of attachment versus detachment. So it's important for me to make sure that my tone communicates security, communicates sensitivity, and attachment to my wife.
And on the other hand, for wives, one of a man's deepest needs, one of his deepest marital needs, is honor and respect. And ladies, you know, we have a way of using tone sometimes. With the words will be fine, but sometimes in our tone, it can be full of sarcasm and disrespect. And if a man feels disrespected, no matter if you're right, it's difficult many times for him to receive the communication that we're saying. So even things like, oh, you said you're gonna fix the kitchen sink this weekend? Mm-hmm. You said that before. So we just have to watch our tone.
This is a tone. In order to really have a solid communication, we have to have enough time to communicate. We have to dedicate time. That's what makes a person feel the priority. When I'm investing time into the relationship, it took time to get married, it took time to date, it took time to communicate, and we prioritized our spouse before we got married. We told our friends, "No, I can't kick it with you this weekend."
My man coming in town.
So enough time to prioritize marriage. And that looks like time to communicate in three areas. The first area is proactive communication. Proactive communication. This talks about planning and talking things out before they happen. Being proactive. Spending some time to think about where do we want to go. Do we really see our marriage progressing? Being proactive communication.
Also, number two is personal communication. And this is just the basic everyday talk without distractions. Just set aside a little bit of time each day, whether it's 10 minutes or an hour if you can, but you can get a lot accomplished in 10 minutes. And this just includes debriefing each other about how your day was. It makes you, helps me to keep my husband current of what's going on in my life or at work or with the kids or whatever's going on. And it fosters friendship, it fosters a partnership, and it fosters intimacy. So part of the pillars is personal communication.
Then there's intimate communication. This loving communication that is affectionate, pleases my spouse, and sometimes it's sexual communication. But intimate communication, that which closer to one another. And this is a level of communication that you don't have with anyone else. So communication, the time that it takes to communicate must be protected, must be prioritized in our lives. Enough time to communicate on not just a surface level, but also at a more in-depth level where we're going beyond just sharing facts to sharing our hearts with one another.
And I just want to add on while we're talking about enough time, and this is something that I had to learn, is really picking the right time. You know, I've learned that when the Cowboys are on the winning drive in the fourth quarter and there's 2 minutes left in the game and they're down by a field goal, that's not the time for me to come sit on the couch between my husband and the TV and say, can we talk about where we're going on vacation next year? That's just not the right time. And it's very important. I think he's interested. He wants to talk about that, but just not at that time. And so the right time is also as important as enough time.
And sometimes the right time first before we have this conversation. Or she needs to take a nap first before we have a conversation, because it's difficult to have productive conversations when you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're tired. And so making sure that it is the right time. The next pillar is trust. Trust. The more you gain trust, the wider the door to the heart is, and vice versa. The less trust, the more closed off people are. And as we think about trust is earned in drops, but it can be lost in buckets. You earn it over many years, and in a few minutes of irresponsibility or insensitivity, that sense of trust.
And so if you're ever in a position where you have lost your spouse's trust for whatever reason, it's very important to exhibit humility to that person, because you're the one that lost the trust. You're the one that made the mistake. Oh, okay. Okay. So it's really important to make sure that you're humble and that you have humility when you're trying to rebuild your spouse's trust. And also, you need patience. As far as humility and patience goes, give the person license, give them time to express their hurt, their disappointment, sometimes even their disgust with you. And make sure that you're consistent when you're trying to build back trust.
Yeah, be where you say you're going to be. Make sure that you're transparent as well. That's consistent. So I need to do what I'm saying I'm going to do. Be where I say I'm going to be. Be honest and open. I don't need to be hiding my phone. If I've lost trust and I'm trying to regain that, I really have given up the right to privacy. In essence, I need to be willing to be transparent with my spouse. Not just apologize and say I'm sorry, but ask, what can I do to try to make it right? What can I do to regain your trust? How can I earn your trust back? Humility, consistency, transparency go a long way in earning trust.
Also, patience goes a long way in earning trust. You know, for the person who has committed the offense or violated the trust, you know, they're over it in a few minutes or a day. You know, they're ready to move on. But sometimes the person who has been hurt is really dealing with something, really dealing with trying to forgive. And perhaps they have forgiven. And so many times, it helps us to know the difference between forgiveness and healing. And I think you had a good analogy about that.
Yeah, so just because I have forgiven doesn't mean that I am healed from the offense. And I think we're going to sit down just to maybe make it easier for you guys to hear us. So just because I am forgiven, that doesn't mean that the person is healed that has forgiven me. It's like having a piece of glass stuck in your hand. And if I have a piece of glass stuck in my hand and I just leave it there, what's going to happen is that it will get infected, it'll fester, it'll look ugly, might smell bad. And eventually, if I just leave this piece of glass stuck in my hand, they may have to cut off my hand in order to save my life. Now, what happens once I remove the glass? Once I remove the glass, healing can begin.
Take place.
But just because the healing process has started, doesn't mean now I'm ready to start giving standing ovations and giving people high fives, because it's still sore, it's still tender. So forgiveness is removing the glass from my hand. Now healing can begin, but there's still some work that needs to be done. So just because I have forgiven you doesn't mean it no longer hurts. That doesn't mean that I'm totally good. So it requires some patience if I violated trust to help the person have the time that they need to heal.
So when the other person says, if you bring up the offense again later on, the other person may say things like, "You're not over that yet? Are we still on that? Well, how long ago did that happen?" That's when you are pouring salt in the wound, or you're just taking your finger and just kneading it, pointing back into that sore spot, because they're trying to, they've forgiven, they're working on it, they're trying, but it's still a sore spot there. So when we say those insensitive, impatient comments, then that's what we're doing. So patience is also a necessity when it comes to rebuilding trust.
In addition to trust being a pillar of communication, there's also truth. Truth is a pillar, a foundation of communication. And this truth must be paired with love. We are to speak the truth in love. Right. And in marriage, much of the truth that we speak really isn't biblical truth. So there's not a whole lot of let me share with you truth from the Bible, and you need to do this. No, much of the truth in marriage is sharing our own personal truth, sharing our feelings, sharing our preferences, sharing what is true for us. So we're speaking our truth. Doesn't mean that it's necessarily right. So if I feel neglected, I need to share that. That may be a true statement, even if that's not her intention. I'm sharing that truth that I feel neglected.
And when he shares this truth with me, then I need to make sure that I provide a safe environment for him to be vulnerable, not to blow off his feelings, not to just say, whatever. But I want to make sure that I acknowledge him and that I validate him. And as part of communication, if we can't provide a safe space for us to share our most intimate feelings, and that will be very damaging to the marriage. Truth without love is just mean. And a good example of it is just like surgery without anesthesia. You don't want it. You might need it, but you don't want it. So speaking the truth in love, very important.
So does your spouse have permission to speak truth to you? I think it's important to give each other that permission to say the hard things. And just because I say the hard things doesn't mean I'm not saying it in a loving way, or I'm saying it from the evil place. Because I love you, I'm willing to say the hard things. So being willing to share that truth from a place of love is a pillar of communication.
Sometimes there may not necessarily be hard things, but maybe sometimes they're the little things, the little annoyances, the little pet peeves that kind of bother you. And, you know, sometimes if you don't express those things in a loving way, they can all kind of fester and snowball into something much bigger. So, for example, the words may be, you know, I know this might sound petty, but if you would, when you come out of the bathroom, would you leave the seat down for me?
Yeah, and so by her letting me know that it may sound petty, disarms me, and it lets my guard down so that I'm not saying in my head, she knows she could have kept that, right? Because she's already let me know, hey, this might be a little thing, but we all have what I call a little big button. It's a little thing to us, a little thing to everybody else rather, but it's big to us. So if it's your little big button, just say that. Like, hey, it may not mean much to you, may not bother you, but it just bothers me. I know it seems silly, but it bothers me when this happens. So being able to share that, and a person feel comfortable enough and safe enough in the marriage to share that truth. The pillar is teamwork. Teamwork. We embrace each other's differences. We appreciate what the other person brings to the table. We utilize their gifts, their talents, and abilities for the good of the relationship so that we can promote a sense of unity and realizing we're not in competition with each other.
And I'm so glad. And one example of this, something that I appreciate in him for teamwork, is just this seminar alone. Just Lamont is very good at technology, Zoom, and everything else, and PowerPoint. I could have done it, but it would have taken me a few days where it just took him a few minutes. So I appreciate that about him. I'm not jealous. It just helps us as a team. So that's an example of teamwork.
Yes. And when we can have this sense of teamwork, it's a win-win. When she wins and she looks good, I look good.
Right.
When I look good, she looks good. We both win because it's not a competition. We're partners in the relationship. So prioritize relationships is the next way that we prioritize our marriage. We have to have prioritized relationships.
And the thing is, the greatest threat to most marriages isn't from bad things, but from good things out of priority. And that's one thing that we just kind of have to just be aware of. Sometimes it's not a bad thing, it's just a good thing that's out of priority. And what are those threats? There could be threats such as, children, spending time with the children, church activities sometimes, extended family, friends, work, hobbies, and interests. Again, all those things are very good things. However, if they're out of priority, if they take so much time and energy away from your marriage, then it can be a threat to your marriage when it's out of priority.
Yeah.
Priority.
So how then do we manage the tension of prioritizing our marriage while fulfilling our other obligations? So you can't, if you haven't reached that retirement point yet, you can't say, "Oh, forget about work. So I need to focus on my marriage." No, there are some tensions that have to be built. If you have small children in the home, then you have to manage that tension of they have what they need. They can't drive. They can't do everything for themselves. So managing this tension and fulfilling our other obligations at the same time prioritizing our marriage. How do we do that?
Any way that we do that, and the short answer is that we need boundaries. We need boundaries. And boundaries come in this order. We have children. Our children need boundaries. Our family needs boundaries. Work, church, and other friends and organizations, hobbies, all those things, we need boundaries around them so that they don't present a threat to our marriage.
So as we look at the need for boundaries, we set boundaries with our children so that they know our marriage is a priority. And if you would talk about some of those family boundaries.
Honor your parents still without feeling like they have authority over you. And sometimes as a new couple or as any married couple, sometimes that can include, maybe being mindful of taking money from other family members. Because money does a funny thing. When someone gives you money, sometimes they feel like they have some authority and some say over your life. So a conversation may go something like, oh, so you're not coming to our house for Christmas this year? You're going to your wife's house for Christmas? All right. Well, I guess you just won't be getting that check this month. So I know that doesn't happen in any of our families that we know. I know, I'm just, there's some other people way out there. But I'm just saying, be careful of taking money from other family members.
And sometimes the issue with in-laws is really, they're all up in our marriage because they've neglected their home. Or they may feel lonely. They may not be married. So they are in our relationship because we have not established those boundaries. And so we have to establish those boundaries, protect your spouse from your family. So if I have an issue with, or my wife's family is treating me some type of way, then she would speak to that with her family. If my family is mistreating my wife, I would speak to that with my family. Protect your family from your spouse. When it comes to family closely related to that is friends. And our friends influence us for better or for worse. Setting boundaries at work. With our cell phones now, there's an expectation that we are available all the time.
That's right.
And it's like, no, you may have to be like Red from the Five Heartbeat. My office hours are 9 to 5.
And that can be very challenging, especially for some entrepreneurs. You're always on the clock. You're always on. You want to be there, answer those calls. You want to answer those texts because you want to seal the deal so you can have a livelihood. And sometimes that's a great challenge and a place for us to establish boundaries. And sometimes that may look like, I know you really want to seal that deal, but is there a way that you can just leave the phone alone for just 30 minutes so we can enjoy that? Something like that. Just be open, touch your spouse when you're talking and making these requests or communicating with them. A lot of times that may help things go over a little bit easier.
One of the most important ways we communicate love is about what we're willing to give up for our spouse. What am I willing to give up? Am I willing to give up guys' night? Am I willing to give up social media? Am I willing to give up some of the hobbies and interests that I have so that I can prioritize my spouse? And when she sees me giving up things to be able to spend time with her, that hits us, that connects us, that lets her know that she's a priority.
So there's an exercise. We're just going to read through it. We're running out of time to do it, but okay. And so the exercise, your number one, what are up to 3 things that your spouse can do to make you feel like a priority? Because sometimes things that are important to you may not be important to your husband or your spouse. I love getting flowers. Lamont doesn't. That's not his love language. That doesn't make him feel like a priority. So an example of this exercise that we encourage you to do this with your spouse is to answer this question. And for me, one example would be or to cook dinner for me or cook dinner for the family when I come home from work so I can get some rest, or just one Saturday, just watch the kids the whole day and I can get a little me time. And that speaks to me. That is my language. And I've let him know that.
Yes. And I would say, hey, you can prioritize us spending some time playing tennis. That would be great. I feel like a priority when you bring me a dessert, when you go out to eat. you're with your friends and you have a dessert there at the restaurant you think I like, hey, that lets me know you're thinking about me. So yeah, just spend some time talking about what your spouse can do to make you feel like a priority. Some tips for prioritizing your your marriage. Attend a marriage conference or retreat. Have a weekly date night. Pray together. Worship together. Take some walks together. This was something that we started doing during,
Especially last year.
during the lockdown. It's like, okay, places may be closed, but outside is still open.
It's always a
So we could walk around our neighborhood. We would go
without a mask.
for walks together. Yeah, you can walk around outside the neighborhood without a mask. So that's what we did. So these are some things that you can do to prioritize your marriage. Taking a short trip. We try to utilize work trips. So if she's on a training for her job, tag along. All I have to do is pay for my transportation there because the company is paying for the hotel. And, hey, we're able to connect and the way to prioritize marriage on a budget.
Yes, or even just utilize big mamas and papas and grandparents, find a place for them, nice safe place for kids to spend the night. So you could have a nice quiet time at home just by yourself. Talking daily face to face without distractions. It sounds small, but it's really a big deal. No distractions from other people at the phone, Netflix, the TV, and just talking face to face without distractions. And it doesn't even take that much time. Not going to bed angry is one thing, one way to prioritize your marriage. Read a marriage book together because that way you all like a mini little book club for two. And then you all may find some ideas that you want to start implementing together. Watch a show or movie together. I thought about this because um, Lamont might be in one room watching a show and I'm in another room watching The Crown or whatever it may be. And so it's like, let's decide a show that we can watch together and just kind of bond. Find a shared hobby and do it regularly. Also, planning times for having sex. Sometimes it might sound kind of unrealistic, or it's like, do I have to do all that? But sometimes just try for a month to see if it really helps. Planning times for intimacy.
Leads us to prioritize romance. Prioritize romance. Romance is a daily need for both men and women. And many people don't believe it's possible to keep love growing. They begin this inevitable slide after the honeymoon into joining the club of the married and the miserable. But a daily prioritized romance keeps passion alive, keeps the relationship dynamic, keeps you from taking each other for granted. So we're going to begin talking about romance and ways that you can prioritize romance in your relationship.
So there are four elements of romance. The first one is meeting an unspoken need or desire in your spouse, speaking love in your spouse's language that speaks to them, communicating unique values to your spouse, and also empathy. So let's talk a little bit more about these.
When it comes to meeting the unspoken, romantic love is preemptive and not reactive. It's preemptive and not reactive. So it's not romance if I mess up and I bring her some flowers. That's not romance. That's me trying to make up for my mess up. But it's preemptive. It's just because it's before something happens. But if there is not a crisis, I do the romantic act because I am meeting the need of my spouse. It helps me not get comfortable and lazy and take my spouse for granted. When we stop studying our spouse, then we can pretty much rest assured somebody else is. And they would have no problem being preemptive in their romance of our spouse. So we have to study our spouse so that we can act preemptively.
The lack of attention and energy and focus in our relationship a lot of times can, it may make you feel unwanted, unattractive. And this is when you increase the chances of an affair many times. Not that you want it to happen, but it just makes conditions more favorable. So it's really important for us not to get comfortable and not to stop studying each other, not to stop putting forth this effort so that we can really make sure we focus on our spouse's needs. Because if we don't be surprised if someone else will. Romantic love puts a high value on us. And also, be willing to take the first step to restore romantic love. We don't have to say, well, he knows where I am, he's a man, he needs to make the first move. But when you're in a marriage, it's okay to take the first step to restore romantic love.
Men like romance too. Men want something on Valentine's Day, or like to be noticed, like to know that they are thought about as well. Both men and women can take this first step in restoring the romantic love.
And usually men and women don't want the same thing for Valentine's Day. So you all have that conversation with your spouse.
Yeah. So you speak your spouse's language. What are the major needs of women? This is taken from the book, His Needs, Her Needs. Security. And we talked about this sense of security, but women need to feel a sense of security in the marriage relationship. Open and honest communication is a need. And this involves sharing our feelings and our thoughts with our spouse and being willing to listen to her, knowing that she's going to have more words than I do. And I may want to stop listening before she stops talking, but having open and honest communication where I'm available for her to share with me and I'm sharing with her. Soft, non-sexual touch doesn't have to lead anywhere. Just to know that she's thought about. And then women want leadership. They want men who are going to be the spiritual heads of their household, who are going to lead them toward God, lead their family in finances and in planning and just knowing that the household, the relationship is going somewhere.
And the major needs of men in marriage, again, according to the book, His Needs, Her Needs, include honor and respect. That is a huge need for a man. It's never, ever okay to embarrass your spouse, especially in private or in public, especially not in public. That is one of the major, it can be a major hindrance in the marriage. Sex, intimacy. Sex is one of the major needs of a man. Friendship with his wife. It's what I call a ride or die. He needs a companion, one that he can take to go play tennis or to the company Christmas party or wherever. And domestic support. And those are needs.
For romance to be successful, it should be a win-win proposition where both spouses meet the needs of each other that they may not have themselves. So it really speaks to my spouse when I meet a need that she has that I don't necessarily have. And it speaks to me when she meets a need that I have, she does not necessarily have. It's a win-win proposition. Be willing to accept your spouse's needs as legitimate without judging or rejecting your spouse. That means that if I say I need something, I don't want her saying...
You don't need that. That's not necessary.
And she doesn't want me saying, really? So that's what we're doing now, huh? Okay. So don't judge it, don't reject it, because when you do that, then your spouse will not want to share much of anything else with you.
And romance occurs when we understand and accept our spouse's needs and then pursue them in their languages. And so, along the lines of speaking the language, men, communicate your needs in your words. Sounds simple, but it's very profound. And by the same token, women, speak the language. Use your words. Don't try to hint around. You know what? I would love it if you buy me flowers for my birthday tomorrow. Something simple. Just speak. A lot of times men want to give you what they want, what you want, but they may not be sure. Just take the guesswork out.
Yeah.
So speak. Don't assume he ought to know what you feel and think.
So romantic love communicates that you are special, you're unique, you are highly valued. So romance is for one person only. If you do it for others, it really isn't true romance. So if for Mother's Day, you buy flowers for your wife, for your mom, and for your daughter, it's nice, but it's not really romantic. Romance says you're special. You are unique. There is a high value that I place on you. This relationship is different from any other relationship.
And you have to keep your heart in a relationship. Empathy is how we connect hearts. What you should do is think, you know what? What is it like to be my spouse? Would I want to be married to me right now with the way that I'm acting? So empathy is how we connect our hearts and make sure that you keep your heart in the relationship.
Empathy helps me to experience the I-ness of another, putting myself in her shoes, not closing off my heart to my spouse. So, what can you say or do on a consistent basis that lets your spouse know that you value him or her? What can you say? What can you do consistently? Think about that. Uh, Write it down if you have to, and start doing it to let your spouse know that you value him or her.
And also share at least one quality that you value in your spouse. Because sometimes you may be admiring your spouse or you think they know, but sometimes it's good to hear the words because they may or may not know. So using your words, sharing with your spouse the one quality, at least one quality that you value in your spouse. And this can spark romance.
So we leave you with Ephesians chapter 5, verse number 33. Let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself.
And let the wife see that she respects her husband.
So when we love one another, when we show that respect, we are able to focus and prioritize our marriage. We bring glory and honor to God. We keep Satan at bay in our relationship, and we let our spouse know that they are truly special and important, not just someone who is important, but they are the most important person in our lives, second only to God. So we thank you for tuning in and sharing with us as we talked about this law of priority. We encourage you to check out the book, The Four Laws of Love, and there you can explore the other laws of the well as well, the law of pursuit, partnership, and purity. And we're just grateful to Southwestern for the invitation to come and be a part of this 84th Southwestern Christian College lectureship. And we pray that we have shared something with you all that will help strengthen your marriage, that will encourage you. And no matter where your marriage is, if it's good, it's our prayer that it'll be better. If it's a little rocky right now, we know that God is able to take that which is rocky and smooth it out to where you look back on your marriage and you say it's nothing but the Lord that has allowed us to come this far.
Yeah.
So with that, we will end. We're going to get our facilitators here, and I think we're ready to end. And this is us. This is our family.
Thank you for your time.